But we must never forget that no government schemes are going to perfect man. We know that living in this world means dealing with what philosophers would call the phenomenology of evil, or as theologians would put it, the doctrine of sin. There is sin and evil in the world, and we're enjoined by Scripture and the Lord Jesus to oppose it with all our might.
Coming to you from the epicenter of the Constitution ablaze, this is the America Held Hostage podcast, America's economy on life support. Now here's your host, Jon Hinton.
Welcome to the next installment of the America Held Hostage podcast. I'm your host, Jon Hinton. Alongside with us is the venerable JJ Knight. He'll join us in just a moment. Just wanted to let you know you can email us at americaheldhostagepodcast@gmail.com. You can follow me on Twitter at jhinton_ for all the news and views from a constitutional conservative Christian worldview, where we're looking at pop culture, politics, theology, the pastorate, all from a Christian worldview lens. You can also find us on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and wherever you partake in great podcasts yourself. Just look up either GK Podcast Network or America Held Hostage, and you can find us there. Like, subscribe, share a 5-star review, and then share us with friends and family and help us get the word out on what we think is something that is vastly needed in today's society, which is commentary about the news that's being lost in the fray in a fake news culture, but looking at it from the truth and lens of Scripture. For more on that, you can log on to the GK Online Network. Go to gatekeepersonline.com and look for our plugged-in membership. You can save up to 30% on your subscription if you type in the code JOHN. That will get you a book called Social Injustice. That is where you can also pre-order the book by Pastor Sam Jones, 5 Steps to Kill a Nation. Also, you can be able to follow other podcasts there as well, from Dustin Faulkner, Pastor Sam Jones, and our founder, Jeff Dornick. So log on to Gatekeepers Online and find more about us there. Now, wanted to bring on JJ Knight, as he has been a new contributor to the show. JJ, it's good to have you back with us as we get ready to go into another deep dive for the Tuesday episode. We're going to focus on 5 to 7 stories about governmental overreach that we saw that broke over the weekend as Democrat governors continued to double down on the dumbassery moving forward. So whatever you want to say before we kick this off, it's your turn.
Yeah, it's good to be back, and sadly, we're seeing it grow. The Democrats aren't alone. It isn't. Sadly, there's probably a few Republican governors in the fray, and more than a few Republican elected officials, judges, lawyers, everybody short of Batman, really.
Speaking of Batman, at the rate Elon Musk is going, he could be the new Batman, telling Americans that give them their damn freedom back. More cowbell from the Tesla CEO when it comes to that. And you pointed out to me, as we begin going down this fray, let's touch there first. Elon Musk saw this firsthand growing up. Explain the explained the linkage to what he saw when it came to totalitarian dictatorships and his viewpoint right now as the former founder of PayPal and the current CEO of Tesla.
For those who don't know, Elon Musk, you've probably heard his accent, I hope. But for those who don't know, he was born in South Africa, the country, South Africa, during what was called apartheid. That was a organization and period of time where a white minority, after the Dutch, I believe, pulled out, the European colonial power pulled out, they wanted to continue the oppression of the black supermajority there in South Africa. And so they had all the power and all the military might, and it was, I mean, Jim Crow doesn't even begin to cover some of the, actually laws of the whole nation on the books. Now, to be fair, Elon was white, but he saw this happening. There were record numbers of, quote, people falling out of windows at police stations. All of them were either black or pro-black rights. So he's seen this firsthand. He's seen a government, a minority of people with their own agenda, have total authoritarian control and oppress the vast majority. And now that their government is still reeling from that. They still have corruption in the high places, and now the whites are starting to be oppressed there by the black majority in some cases. It's starting to become more political. Shocker. So it's not new, and Elon Musk has seen it, and he's literally come up from nothing. And politically I'm not on the same boat as him, but yeah, he's seen it. He's not unaware of what's going on.
He's seen it firsthand, and he's crying out against it. And we need more people to do that. And it's sad that a progressive that is most likely unsaved and pagan is doing more to cry out for freedom and liberty, sadly, than a lot of pastors in our pulpits right now. But we've beat that drum for the last 2 weeks. So let's go on to the people that these pastors are cowering under. Headline from Oregon. Oregon Governor Kate Brown extends the lockdown to July 6th, JJ, despite ranking 40th on the state coronavirus list with 104 deaths in a state of 4 million. This broke late Saturday night, according to, yes, former Love Connection game show host Chuck Woolery on Twitter. We found the links. We will link to them in the show notes. But Oregon Governor Kate Brown is extending the lockdown another 2 months to July 6th in Oregon as pagan progressives continue to run amok and double down on the dumbassery of tyranny. Your thoughts on that, JJ, as we kick off the podcast?
Well, and this is going to be our point here. One of our 2 points, really. We'll get into the counterpoint a little later. But the large S has started. Christ, the Lord, Christ, God, said in the Old Testament all the way back with the chosen people when they wanted a king just like everybody else, when their judges and officials were corrupt and the priesthood stood by, the prophet's own children, 2 sons were struck dead, and because he just didn't intervene. So the Lord went, okay, and then the people cried out, and he warned them, he's going to reap what he doesn't sow, he's going to take what's not his, he's going to lord it all over you. That was the warning. When you appoint someone else to the executive, to the power of rulership above the Lord, when they get power, the inch, they want the mile. They get the mile, well, they want the friggin' state. They get the state, they want your butt. And they are going to kick it. So, yeah. And this Oregon governor, 40th out of 50, and she's extending it to July, beyond the Independence Day, which is going to have to start turning into Dependence Day, not the old people underwear. dependence on the government. Although it is crap.
Well, our government is full of crap right now, so there's plenty of depends to go around in D.C., especially if you're a geriatric like Joe Biden or Nancy Pelosi. But that notwithstanding, when it comes to Independence Day, you don't think that there isn't going to be a Viva la Revolution when it comes on July 4th if these draconian lockdowns are kept in places? I can tell you this for a fact firsthand. I live in New Jersey, and today, the most people I've seen in the last 2 months were out and about. We had 70-degree weather. I saw a guy.
Same here in Illinois.
I saw a guy drive into our apartment complex, and you could tell he went out on a joyride on his Harley. And I said, "Hey, nice hog there." He said, "Thanks." He said, "The governor would probably think that's non-essential travel." I say, "Forget him. You do your thing." He's like, "Solid, man. I agree." And and it just reminded me, people are over it. The amount of people that we saw in different parking lots that had pulled up lawn chairs, they were grilling in parking lots, socially distancing from friends, but not wearing masks. People are just over this. And that leads to another story that we're going to get to in just a moment. Apple is showing data that it was reported from Forbes.com, and Rob Eno of Blaze Media tweeted it out, showing that shelter in place is ending whether your government likes it or not. To which I say, it's about dang time. America, take your freedom back. Take your liberties back. This is over. This is over. The data does not, it doesn't matter if there's a second wave. We were told not to trust. We were told to trust the government. We did. We did 15 days. They extended it another 30. Then we were told that we needed to flatten the curve in order to not overwhelm the hospitals. Then we were told that we needed to flatten the curve in order to slow the spread, so that way it wouldn't grow. Now we're being told you need to shelter in place so that way we don't have a second wave. That sounds like we're redefining the terms of victory like we did in Iraq, like we did in Afghanistan, like we did in Vietnam. This does not make any sense. They're lying to you. Why? Because bureaucrats do not want to admit when they did something wrong. And they're not going to admit that what they did was wrong because in their minds, they think that they saved you plebeians from yourselves. They think that they saved upwards of 2 million people and that they know better than you do. Well, the thing is that Scripture says submit to the governing authorities that are over you. That's Romans 13. Well, the thing is, in this country, the governing authority is 1, the Constitution, and 2, a Constitution that starts out with we, the people. You're the governing authority in this country. They come and take their orders from you, not the other way around. You're the boss of them. We surround them, and you need to take your dang freedom back. So
yeah, and to bounce off that, it's submit to the governing authorities. When they praise good and punish evil, by the way, people leave that out a lot. It's praising good. That means, giving tax incentives to charitable organizations, giving awards for good work, for the kid rescuing the squirrels and the firefighter saving lives, praising them, punishing evil, not releasing criminals, and arresting people trying to worship. That's literally against the biblical mandate. But like their father, the father of lies, what's coming out of their mouth isn't a lie. It's not the whole truth.
It's true. It's true. To the story that I alluded to was from Forbes.com. You can find that in our show notes and our rundown. Apple's mobility trends report, according to Forbes.com, shows that traffic in the U.S. and other countries like Germany has pretty much doubled in the past 3 weeks. It had been down upwards of 72%. And location data provided by Foursquare says that gas and fast food visits are back to pre-COVID-19 levels in the American Midwest. We'll show the graph, but it says that the rule patterns are following the same pattern as urban localities. Foursquare said, quote, gas station traffic has returned to pre-COVID-19 levels in the Midwest and in rural areas throughout the country. Foot traffic to quick service restaurants has risen over the past several weeks. So whether governments, medical professionals, or scientists want it or not, people are tired of the shutdown and eager to get back to normal life.
Right. And that's sort of our second point. They're going to be the governors and the government. I'm not going to narrow it down to just Democrats, Republicans, presidents, governors. The government, the people in power, they got a feel for it. They know all it takes is a little fear and a little germ. And so, but people are going to push back. Fear is only so strong. And I'm glad to finally start seeing a spark in it, because to be honest, I was concerned that we were a very vocal minority. But as it turns out, maybe people are listening to us. And for that, I say, thank you, listeners.
Yes. In addition to that story from Forbes, our friends from Discern News linked to an article, and they reported respondents to a Kelton Global survey said that 72% said, quote, they would snap if coronavirus lockdowns went into June. 100% of all those surveys said they would break stay-at-home orders if they were continued for 6 months. 72% of Americans are approaching their breaking point over coronavirus lockdowns, according to this news article from Discern News. More than 60% of respondents to this Kelton Global survey said that they were afraid of the idea of going out to dinner, with 1 out of every 5 of those respondents saying that they worried that fear might last forever. To which I say, you're at your breaking point. You need to know the data, and they're not telling you the data. We're giving you the data here at America Held Hostage. Stanford, Miami University, or the University of Miami, sorry. The University of Miami, Boston University, Southern California.
The doctors and nurses on the ground.
They're saying they're not overwhelmed. They're saying that the antibody tests show that even in the epicenter, 1/4 of everyone in the epicenter area where I'm from, New York City, New Jersey area, that they have antibodies. Me and my wife will get antibody tested later on this spring. We fully believe that we had it when we look back at our symptoms back in late November. So this has been more widespread than previously thought, and it's because for a lot of people that were healthy, it was pretty mild. The thing is that we told you in the weekend bonus podcast that went up on Saturday that you can find on the America Held Hostage webpage at GK Online, gatekeepersonline.com, or on iTunes in our podcast feed. We told you that anywhere from 35% of all deaths in the state of Illinois to upwards of 50% of all COVID-19 deaths in Maryland to upwards of 65% of deaths in other places, in other states, were due to coronavirus deaths happening in nursing homes. So we're not quarantining the sick and vulnerable and those with pre-existing conditions, and the rest of us are going about our lives. We're not doing surgical strikes with this. We're throwing a tyrannical blanket over all of it, and that's not America. Take your country back and follow the data. Don't allow fear porn like this to say, well, I'm afraid that we're not going to be able to go out to eat. No, you're going to find out pretty quick. This was much ado about nothing. And the thing is that if you get it, you get it. We can't live our lives in fear. We can't stay shut down for 6 months to 2 years. That's just not plausible. We can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. But a government that isn't based in reality and the truth of God's word is going to cower in fear, because ultimately they don't want to deal with their own mortality, and they believe that they can be like Lucifer said, I can ascend to the Most High. I will be like God. I can find a cure for this. I will find a vaccine, and then I can get back to normal. No, you can't. You need to understand there is sin and evil in the world, as our intro music quote from Ronald Reagan says, and that there is a fallen nature to this, and coronavirus, sadly, is part of that. You can't stop living life just because of some bat guano, JJ.
Mm-hmm. And to the church leaders specifically, who are just okay with having a podcast for a service. I'm not talking an informative one. I'm talking for their Sunday sermon. You are one step away from where the people that have secret church in the Middle East have to be. You just don't want to open your eyes and see it, and you definitely don't want to open your mouths and trust in the Lord and say it. And to you, I have to say, God's not really happy with feckless worship.
Yeah, you will be brought into account for the fact that Scripture says, they praise me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me.
Yeah,
it's one
away
thing
from
to
me,
sing.
You doers of lawlessness.
Yeah, many will cry, Lord, Lord, and he will say, depart from me, for I do not know you. Don't be one of those people. That is where the fear of the Lord begins, because the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Dr. O.S. Hawkins said, what is that fear of the Lord? What does it look like? It's the fear that the Lord would take away his hand of favor and blessing away from you, and that you could fall away. There were a lot of people that heard Jesus' teachings, but they fell away after they were dealt with harsh truth. We're told that there would be a great falling away before Christ returns. And he says, if those days were not shortened in Revelation, would the Son of Man find faith upon the earth? We're supposed to study our life and our doctrine closely. We're supposed to take every thought captive and make it obedient to Christ. So we're supposed to study our faith with fear and trembling. Well, that starts with understanding that there's certain things that are common sense that we need to stand for. And if we're not going to stand for them, then we're ashamed of the gospel, we're ashamed of the truth, and the truth is not in us. So there's some nut cutting time that's about to happen in the church, and you're either going to be a part of it, or you're going to be swept up in it. So I'd rather take strong stock and look inward and see where it is that I need to improve, rather than the Lord hitting me with his holy 2x4 and trying to hit me over the head spiritually to get my attention that I'm not doing what I need to do in this coronavirus pandemic to stand for him. We have another story to get to. Now, in our Thursday podcast last week, we had special guest co-host Shannon Joy from Blaze Media and ShannonJoyRadio.com, or TheShannonJoy.com. She's at Shannon Joy Radio on Twitter. But she had alluded to this story, and I forgot to add it to the show notes, and I found it, and it goes along with our governmental overreach deep dive that we're doing for today's episode. WHAM Channel 13 in the Buffalo-Rochester area linked to a story, JJ, that I want your thoughts, and we'll add this to the show notes. A person with COVID-like symptoms placed in isolation after refusing to quarantine. Now, WHAM Channel 13 is the ABC affiliate in the Rochester region. Monroe County Sheriff's Office deputies say that an individual has been placed in, quote, secure isolation, unquote. In secure isolation after refusing to follow an order to quarantine and refusing to be tested while displaying coronavirus-like symptoms. JJ, first thought, if they quarantine this person and come to find out they just had a simple flu, This is going to be one hell of a lawsuit. And either way, I think it's going to be. But let me finish, and then I'll get your thoughts.
Sorry.
In a statement Friday, the Monroe County Sheriff's Office said that the Monroe County Department of Health in New York imposed a civil order against this person who ignored a health order of isolation on Thursday night. Deputies said the person was taken to Strong Memorial Hospital by specially trained officers and then moved to, quote, a pre-planned quarantine location at the Sheriff's Office Brighton facility on East Henrietta Road. The Monroe County Public Health Department has determined the individual's noncompliance with a health order of isolation endangers the safety, health, and well-being of the citizens of Monroe County. Deputies say that the person was given multiple orders to comply with the health department's orders. The Sheriff's Office has had a plan in place for such a scenario, made in conjunction with the county's Department of Public Health, the County Attorney's Office, and New York State Supreme Court Justice Craig Doran. This person, who is not charged, he or she violated a civil order, is now being housed at this quarantine facility for at least 2 weeks, and no one, according to Shannon, and this happened a week before she mentioned it. This story is dated April 24th. This story is almost 10 days old when this podcast drops. They haven't been able to find out who this person is, what their gender is, what their name is, where they are, if they're even still alive. Your thoughts on this, JJ? Because this isn't just negligence. This is criminal misconduct.
Well, in the United States of America, you're allowed to be held by the police for up to 72 hours without being charged. Let's see. What's 14 divided by 72? Did they let him out for like half an hour in between holdings? Or did they just think he looked Japanese during World War II?
You're saying this is for this man, he's being placed in an internment camp.
Well, we don't want to call him that. We'll just call him an isolation facility or predetermined location away from the other citizens because you pose a risk to the safety of our nation. It's a matter of national security. I'm going to quote Captain Jean-Luc Picard from Star Trek The Next Generation. It's a matter of national security, the age-old cry of the oppressor. We don't have any... They have daily announcements on the radio and in the newspaper about every police activity under the sun. We have no information on this guy, and he's being held without a warrant for more than the legally allowed 72-hour period. He's not even in contempt of court because he never made it to court because there was never an order.
There's no warrant for his arrest, and he's not charged with anything. He just violated a civil order.
Right. He should only be fined, held for the up to 72-hour period, and then either charged or released. And we know you can get a result now in a heck of a lot faster than 10 days. Now there's like 4 different testing methods, and the U.S. is routinely sucked at implementing it. Doesn't matter what level you're at. But regardless, he has rights, and you just crapped on him.
It's true. It's true. And it's
35 years you've been an officer of the law, and clearly you don't know how to enforce it.
Clearly you don't know that you're the last line of defense. You're just following orders. Well, it's good to see that you know how to follow orders with your Gestapo tactics, you SS brown shirt. I can't even. That's not going to stand when it comes to the American public, and I can sure as hell guarantee that will not stand as an excuse before a holy God. It just won't. Well, I was just following orders.
Hey, it didn't work for Nuremberg. That was it's called the Nuremberg defense. I was following orders. Nope.
Famous last words.
Yeah.
Hang yourself by your own words and create a noose of your own making when you say something that stupid. But let's keep going. So there are two stories that are breaking out of New Mexico that happened this past weekend, and they're happening right now as we bring you the podcast and record it for the Tuesday episode. So this happened. We found this from Breitbart News. New Mexico's Democrat Governor Michelle Grisham has extended her state's stay-at-home executive order this past Thursday to May 15th, despite the relatively low number of coronavirus cases and deaths in the state when compared to the other 49 states in the country. But on top of that, we found breaking news from our friends at Discern, and this was the story that really troubled you, that you wanted to touch on specifically, JJ, in our podcast. We're finding out that tonight, through our friends at discern.com, DISRN.com, that Gallup, New Mexico has been ordered under quarantine by martial law. The roads in and out of the city have been sealed by police and Army National Guard. This headline was written by Adam Ford, the co-founder of the Babylon Bee and the founder of Discern News. He linked to the article that went into more detail, but this was what he reported on his website. New Mexico Governor Michelle Grisham on Friday invoked the state's Riot Control Act to lock down the city of Gallup, New Mexico, population 22,000, ordering that all roads leading in and out of the city be sealed off by police and Army National Guard personnel. The governor's office said in a press release, effective at 12 p.m. May 1st, all roads into Gallup are closed. Businesses in the city of Gallup will close from 5 p.m. through 8 a.m. Vehicles may only have a maximum of 2 individuals. Residents of the city should remain at home except for emergency outings and those essential for safety, health, and welfare. Pictures have been posted to social media showing how the quarantine is being enforced as New Mexico state police officers and members of the New Mexico Army National Guard are standing on off-ramps of I-40 that enter Gallup after the New Mexico governor enacted the state's Riot Control Act to help close off all non-essential traffic and non-essential personnel to control the coronavirus outbreak. Gallup rests 100 miles west of the capital city of Albuquerque in the state of New Mexico and has been hit harder by coronavirus than surrounding areas. As of Friday, McKinley County, where Gallup is located, had the highest number of cases of any county in New Mexico, according to Adam Ford of Discern News. This county has 1,027 confirmed infections and 19 deaths, according to the New Mexico Department of Health. Even so, martial law, we predicted that this was going to occur, and you said it's happening. Your thoughts on this, JJ?
Just one correction. Did you say it was the capital, Santa Fe, or Albuquerque?
I said Albuquerque. My bad.
Okay.
It's the capital, Santa Fe.
Right,
but let's keep going. Let's talk about what's happening in Gallup.
You messed me up. Anyway, yeah, this is practice, people. Well, sadly, she's probably just trying to outdo the governess in Michigan, but this is the practice. I mean, this is practice run, man, for how it's going to go down. Right now, I mean, she's the riot. What riot? This is not a riot. It's a medical emergency, and we're finding out it's not that much of an emergency, right? So it's ridiculous, John. It's ridiculous.
Right. Correction. The New Mexico capital city is Santa Fe, not Albuquerque. Albuquerque is the largest city in New Mexico, but the Gallup is 100 miles away from Albuquerque.
So the small city gets locked down, but the big city is free to do whatever it wants. I'm going to take 2 shots in the dark. One, there's no pastors or Christian lawyers protesting, and two, I'm going to guess Gallup has more of one kind of voter party-wise than Albuquerque does.
It's probably a fair assessment. The further
Not
rural
gonna-
you get, the more that there's Republicans. The closer urban you get, the more there are Democrats. And ironically, there's more urban infections of coronavirus than there are rural. But it doesn't matter when you're trying to put your boot to the throat to the masses, the plebeians. You will comply. And it will either come because you will either obey or you will be made to care.
Right. And I mean, a member of my own family, I had a discussion to this very evening, not a couple hours ago. Not even. And I was trying to tell them, I was like, look, you're told to obey God over government. You're told to stand boldly. You're told to, love your neighbor, but love God first. And you should show up to worship him, not just on Sunday, but through your helping and loving of your neighbors. And you're not being allowed now by military force in a city in the United States, Kauai, the island, one of the islands of Hawaii. I was there in February. I want to move there eventually permanently. We'll get into that on another day. It has police checkpoints. Paradise has police checkpoints. Middle of bum butt nowhere now. Oh, New Mexico. Sorry, I forgot the name of the town. Has
Gallup.
police. Gallup has police and military enforcement, and you're being told how to drive, how to live, how to go about your day. And it's not even a real emergency. And they're not even they don't even have an act on the books to cover it in New Mexico. So they're calling it a riot when no riot occurred. Guess what? You're going to pay for that. In this
we
life,
literally saw in New Jersey today, as we're driving into town, there's an overpass sign that we drive under, and they quoted the governor and said, "Don't be a knucklehead. Keep social distancing."
Your governor's a tool.
He is a tool, a tool of the highest order. But to put that up and insult the people of your state that elected you to office, and to quote from your own Twitter account where you've already called people in your state jackasses and calling them knuckleheads and threatening that if they act like a knucklehead in New Jersey and they don't socially distance this weekend after you, because you've been so merciful and so gracious from on high, Governor Murphy. You're opening up the golf courses and you're opening up the state parks, which you never should have closed down in the first place, because people need to be outside to be healthy, not quarantine. That's actually science, and you say that you're following the science. No, you're following your own draconian, tyrannical love of power. So don't even share that type of BS with me. It's just lies from the pits of hell. But let me finish, JJ. For him to say that and call us knuckleheads in this state, that's just tone deaf of the highest order. And people in Trenton, it took Republicans 5 weeks to introduce legislation in this state to go against the governor. They haven't even sued him. We're not hearing a peep from pastors. Everybody is rolling over and just allowing this to occur. Meanwhile, we're here in South Jersey and people are voting with their feet. And they're just like, you know what? I'm over it. If you want to arrest me. I'm done with this. And I'll guarantee you, they keep this up for the next 2 weeks. People are going to start opening up their businesses en masse and saying, you can fine me, you can do whatever you want, I'm not going to pay. Down here in South Jersey, there's 2 different states in New Jersey. Everyone thinks New Jersey is liberal, pagan, leftist. That is true from everything north of Trenton up to the New York City area, in the Newark area. But everything south of Trenton down to Cape May and Wildwood, which is what's considered South Jersey or down the shore area, that is hardcore conservative country. And these people, for example, Wildwood Beach, the city of Wildwood Crest told the governor to take a walk and they've opened their beaches this weekend. They're just not going to comply anymore. And I say more cowbell. That is what your local officials need to do. No, we control our cities. We're going to do what's best for our citizens. And if you want to quarantine, stay at home. But the rest of us that want to live our lives, then you can't. What's the use in staying alive if you're not living?
Mm-hmm.
So I say continue to take your freedoms back, take your liberties back, take your country back, and stand boldly, without wavering, upon the hope that we confess. That means find the scrote to say, I'm not going to live in fear anymore. JJ, your thoughts on that? Because I have a quote to follow up from our donkey of a governor that shows just how tone deaf he is and has been throughout this whole deal. But calling us jackasses and knuckleheads, your thoughts?
Hey man, screw it. Go with the quote. Let's flow with the passion.
He said, "Many of you have come my way. Your interventions to me did not matter one little bit. So with all due respect to all the pressure out there, we frankly couldn't care." That's a direct quote when talking about when he was asked a question this past week in a press conference. That was a direct quote when asked about, well, what do you say to people who are raising concerns that you have engaged in tyrannical governmental overreach and you've violated people's constitutional rights, both state constitutional rights and federal constitutional rights? And that was his answer. "Many of you have come my way. Your interventions to me did not matter one little bit. So with all due respect to all the pressure out there, we couldn't frankly care." That's New Jersey Democrat Governor Phil Murphy.
Did you catch the gaffe? He said we, the royal we. He's literally talking like a monarch. He didn't say I didn't care. He said we.
Why does that stand out to you, JJ?
Because he's talking like a king. Like he speaks for the people, and his will is the only one that matters. We have no king in America but God, but Christ. That was one of the Revolutionary war cries.
Yep. We have no king but Jesus. And
sadly, by the time the ink dried on the Constitution, from the time the Declaration was declared and the ink dried on the Constitution, which was a few years, even those men had started to sell out the principles, and now they're out the window, man. We've got a lockdown on U.S. soil. We've got governors denying honest questions of integrity and character, and we have pastors doing little to nothing except for a few outspoken quacks and a few small heroes here or there, but not many.
Well, this is what our governor tweeted this past Saturday. He said, "If we hear of minimal reports of knucklehead behavior at our parks, then we know you all have taken to heart your responsibility to help us mitigate this pandemic. Frankly, knowing New Jerseyans, this is what I expect. We're smart, and together we're flattening the curves. But if we hear reports of people not taking their health or the health of other park goers seriously, I will not hesitate to close them yet again. If those reports are followed by spikes in the numbers of new cases and increases in the spread of COVID-19 over the next 2 weeks, then that action will be justified. I hope it's the first of these two scenarios. I want everyone to enjoy the weekend, but enjoy it responsibly." Governor Murphy,
Go ahead.
You're playing a very dangerous game. You're playing a very dangerous game. I don't think you know that. But people will not take this lying down. You don't make the orders. You take the orders from your citizens. And frankly, what I saw in South Jersey, you don't give them their freedom back. They'll be meeting you at the governor's mansion soon, just like they're going to do with political Jezebel, Governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer.
The
But keep it up.
governance.
Keep it up, because just like a leftist state like California, where in Huntington Beach, one of the most leftist of all places in California, Huntington Beach, people are saying, are dressing up in formal attire and saying formal protest, mocking the governor for shutting down the beaches in Orange County. No, we're just not going to comply, because ultimately 25%, even if it's just 1 out of every 4, 25% of all Americans, that's way too many for you to be able to step to. So you better watch your P's and Q's, because you're playing a very dangerous game. And I would hate to be any leftist governor that is doubling down on the dumbassery moving forward on this, JJ.
I would too, but sadly, as our point is, that is only going to grow, and the people are only going to get more mad, except the problem is that there is a large portion that are just afraid and aren't going to show up. And you know where that large portion is supposed to be? It is now after midnight. So today, hey, church. But they're at home listening to a podcast, probably, sadly, while a lot of them are watching an old sports game at the same time. I said it.
Well,
but not everybody.
We have, to go along with that warning where I'm like, people are going to want to take their country back. We have 2 more stories and then our closing commentaries. But on Saturday night, Discern News linked to a video of a Texas park ranger being pushed into a lake while telling a crowd to socially distance. This was at Lake Austin. The Texas park ranger was telling a crowd at Lake Austin to disperse and remain 6 feet apart, but was pushed into the water by one of the revelers. As he was explaining social distancing guidelines to the crowd, a man ran up, pushed him into the lake. The park ranger was able to grab onto the man's arm and bring him into the water. The man then climbed out of the water and fled. The suspect, Brandon Hicks, 25, has been apprehended and now faces a charge of attempted assault on a public servant. Now, I can play this clip, but all you're going to be able to do is hear the sound is that the guy was saying. So let's see this clip. Let's hear it.
I got you, man. Got you.
So I think that this guy was trying to be smart and funny, and basically saying, you know what, we really don't care. And that is attempted assault of a public servant.
But that's the beginning. It's going to start with a park ranger, and then it's going to be a Texas ranger, and they will shoot you. And but we have National Guard people on the ground. They don't hesitate. A police officer might, but most wouldn't. But there's no way a military trained. And if this doesn't end soon, there's going to be blood on the ground, and the largesse is just going to grow. And again, it isn't just it's been mostly the Democrat governors, there's my own included, that have been increasing the largesse of government. But Donnie Trump's just sitting there after claiming he had the full authority alone to open everything up. He's just passed the buck. No. You're all elected officials. You are all going to be held to account. And sadly, I know a lot of them are going to get reelected this year. But I'm thinking in the next 2 cycles, things are going to change. I've been calling that. I think both parties are going to have huge shakeups in leadership. Sadly, I think I know which way the blue side's going to go. But the red could be interesting.
To close, we're hearing from Attorney General Bill Barr. He said, quote, "The curve has been flattened. It's time to start rolling back these tyrannical restrictions." In a Q&A session on Twitter on Friday, AG William Barr said it was time to roll back some of these restrictions in an orderly and sensible way. as the president has provided his opening of the United States Again plan that provides a sensible and approach and framework to do that. Now, this was in a Q&A session, and we actually have the clip. I want to play it for you here, JJ, but Attorney General Bill Barr saying, we've got to get away from these restrictions.
Thank you for your question about protecting the Bill of Rights during the pandemic. The government unquestionably has the right when it's facing an immediate catastrophic danger to public safety to impose reasonable and temporary restrictions. But the Bill of Rights doesn't go away during a crisis like this. But what it does do is it requires that the government justify any restrictions as truly necessary and ensure that there are not other ways of addressing the government's interests that are less burdensome on our rights. Now, when this crisis first emerged, I think it was appropriate to have initially broad restrictions because we didn't know much about the disease except it was very contagious, and we didn't want it to overwhelm our healthcare system. But now that the curve has been flattened, the rate of spread has been slowed, our system has not been overwhelmed, and it's time to adjust to the situation. It's time to start rolling back some of these restrictions in an orderly and sensible way. And the president has provided his opening United States Again plan that provides a sensible approach to doing that, a framework for doing that. So we're on the lookout for restrictions that are too widespread, too generalized, and are unduly discriminatory toward liberty such as religious liberty or speech. And we try to work with the state and local governments to address these concerns, and in the appropriate case, we would consider taking action.
Thoughts on that, JJ, as the Attorney General has now issued several warnings over the last couple weeks that what these governors are doing is a violation of constitutional rights?
Well, basically, he sounded like a unicorn, a mythical creature once known as a reasonable, well-spoken politician. If he were running for office, I might even think of voting for him. And if he is indeed issuing warnings, and that's in preparation for taking action, then, as you would say, ring the damn cowbell.
Thank you, Christopher Walken. We want to close up with a funny story that we found from our friends at the Babylon Bee. You may not have seen this, but it's a hilarious headline. Scientists who didn't predict a single thing accurately for the last 2 months are confident that they know what the weather is going to be like in 100 years when predicting climate change. Once again, from the Babylon Bee, scientists who didn't predict a single thing accurately for the last 2 months are confident they know what the weather is going to be like in 100 years when it comes to climate change.
I do. I'm going to say it. I've said it before. I'll say it again. The Babylon Bee is there's 3 things in life that are great and wonderful gifts from God. Number 1 at the top was the birth and death and resurrection of his son Jesus, his forgiveness of sins. Number 2, your parents who raised you. And number 3 is the Babylon Bee. People, you need to read them. And it isn't just headlines, people. They write full professional level articles with a touch of satire unmatched on this earth. It's hilarious. It's on point. I want more.
According to the headline for the Babylon Bee, authorities in the scientific community who touted faulty COVID-19 models, quote, are pretty confident, unquote, that they know what the weather is going to be like in 100 years, sources confirmed on Wednesday. Yeah, we were off by a factor of about 1 billion in our predictions for what happened over the last few months, but trust us, we know exactly what the climate is going to be like in a century, said leading scientific authority Dr. Garth Wendybrook at a press conference.
In other news, water is wet, the sky is blue, and you should be on church today. Just saying. In church, not on it. Sorry.
The pointing out the hypocritical dumb of what's going on.
But in a hilarious way.
In a hilarious way, the Babylon Bee is definitely doing the Lord's work at this time. So they have hard news when it comes to their Discern news service, and then they make fun of the news, just like their Twitter account says, fake news you can trust. Our friends at the Babylon Bee, just I have followed them for the last 4 years. They are helping us find some sanity and some frivolity in this age of madness. So
not just that, they are actually doing the work and the hands and work of Jesus, like Samaritan Purses with the tornadoes. Babylon Bee has just set money aside, and they're like, look, if you're a subscriber, you're a listener, you're going to hear this. If you've got a need and COVID's got you knocked down, or the edicts have you knocked down, reach out. Maybe we can help you. And they're doing it while our pastors are just all like, yeah, just listen to the sermon on the internet and you'll be fine.
It's all going to blow over. Yeah. And just once again, the Babylon Bee being the hands and feet of Jesus, informing you with news, helping you focus on the things above, whatever is good, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is of pure report. If there be any good in these things, think on these things, as the Apostle Paul said. So they're finding a way to crack jokes and bring frivolity, and then they're helping to do Matthew 25:40, and whatever you did for the least of these brothers of mine, you did for me. So a tip of the cap to the Babylon Bee and Discern News. That's just personally. I'm not being asked to do this at all. I've just been impressed by what they did for me personally and how they have helped us out when it comes to news and social commentary in this age of madness. JJ, you had a quote that you wanted to end with when it came to your commentary, so share that with the audience as we close up.
This is a quote by Charles Louis de Secondant. That would be Charles Louis II, for those who don't speak French. The deterioration of every government begins with the decay of the principles on which it was founded. This is spot on with what's going on right now.
Explain.
And that's really all I have to say. Well, our freedom of speech going away. Freedom of religion practically dead on arrival. Freedom of assembly practically dead on arrival. Free exercise of religion, which would be carrying out not just worship, but in your everyday life, is going to be next. The right to carry firearms is constantly questioned. Soon will probably be gone. Trial by jury, search and seizure with you need reasonable doubt. You need a warrant. These things are all going away. We got a guy being held without warrant, without trial. We've got troops on the ground. Troops on the ground. Police states in paradise. We've got rules and tyrannical things going out, and the governess is taking away food and the right to grow your own seeds and gardening tools. Surprising, because she is one. And then the guys who are supposed to be standing up and speaking truth to power, not just from the pulpit, but going out and helping, are doing little to nothing. It's taking a branch of them that does the news and brings the relief of levity, which is not nothing, to be the ones actually reaching out and being the helpers. Is one of my personal heroes, Fred Rogers. If Mr. Rogers were alive today, I think he would give his first ever public address of shame. I really think he would.
Read
And
that
that's
quote one more time, JJ, as we finish up.
Charles Louis de Secondant said, "The deterioration of every government begins with the decay of the principles on which it was founded." If you don't stand up for your principles, if you don't stand up for your constitutional rights, which were founded in the laws of God, you're not going to have them. You're not going to have them.
I think that's the perfect way to close. I have said for years, America is only as strong as the moral fabric that makes it up, the strength of its families and churches, and that when that moral fabric begins to rip at the seams, America decays from within. It happened to the Romans, it's happening to us. So if you want to take your freedom back and your country back, and you want your liberties back, you need to fall on your knees, America, and you need to repent. And you need to trust in the God that saves and find the real freedom that is found at the foot of the cross. For JJ Knight, I'm Jon Hinton. Follow me on Twitter at @JHinton_. Email the podcast at americaheldhostagepodcast@gmail.com. And for the GK Podcast Network, this has been the America Held Hostage Podcast. That's the way it should be. Colossians 2:8.